Saw the mention of Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. I can't tell you how well my LASIK has gone. I can see up close. I can see far away. I absolutely love it, and it is phenomenal. And they're local, so you know that they want to take care of your eyes because their reputation matters in the Knoxville community. Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn. Their vision centers are outstanding for cataracts, LASIK, whatever the case may be. And we want to bring in a very special guest because I wanted a very early look at Clemson, and we'll do that right now. Chris Landry of Landry Football joins us, brought to you in part by our friends at Owl's Nest Barbecue right there in Ottawa. Owl's Nest Barbecue has the expertise where they can just send you in the direction you need to go, get the right rubs and sauces, and also they've got the Green Mountain Grills, which are awesome. Chris, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good. How you guys doing this morning?
I'm well. Before we dive into the actual Tennessee Clemson matchup, any surprise that you had from the rankings last night? I thought they pretty much, or yesterday afternoon, I thought they pretty much fell where I thought they would.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it last week. It was, after we talked about it later last week, that once the committee spoke on Tuesday, that's the way it was going to be. I mean, whoever was going to be 5 was going to jump into the 4th spot if USC lost. I thought that Georgia, Michigan, and TCU were going to be in regardless. I mean, I'm not surprised that it caused controversy because it always does, and everybody's got thoughts. But I do think that if you look at the entire season and you look at everything, that to me is, there shouldn't have been anybody surprised with what they did leading up to that. So I guess that's the only issue was going to be whether USC was going to win or not, in my mind. And if they didn't, then Ohio State would move in, and that's exactly what happened.
Now, Amanda wants to jump in here. I remind you that Viles Automotive Group on Callahan is your home for car service and car selection. Viles Automotive Group, they want, they need, and they appreciate your business. Viles Automotive Group, Amanda.
So I do want to clarify on Dabo. I think we just talked about him, and I got a quote from him, and I don't think it's fair that people are saying he doesn't like name, image, likeness or NIL, because what he said was, I'd have liked to have seen it tied to graduation education. What I said, whenever that was, I still say, I'm against professionalizing college athletics where we get away from the collegiate model and the value of a degree and the value of an education. I've never, ever said I'm against name, image, and likeness. I think it's a lot of common sense. I think it could be more. I think it could be tied more to the education process so everybody would have had a little more opportunity.
Sounds a little bit like a walkback statement to me. Chris, I know that most of the, if not all the coaches, hate NIL. But we were talking about Dabo Swinney, and my question to you with Dabo is, even if he doesn't like it, was it wise for him to talk about the fact he doesn't like it publicly at any point, which he has?
No, it is not wise to do that. You're right. Nobody likes it. No coaches like it. But everybody, if you notice, every coach, when they talk about NIL, and I'm all for players getting paid money. That was kind of nice. That's like, let's translate. So all you recruits, I'm all for you getting money, and that's what they did. Dabo tends to be one of those that speaks and then he thinks later. And so he tends to say things. What he did is the truth serum came out. So people might say, hey, good for Dabo for saying what he truly feels and not trying to mislead. He did say it. That's what he thinks is what most think, but it's not smart to do it. It's had an effect. The fact that they've not embraced it, and not just NIL, but the transfer portal was probably the biggest thing. They're losing guys, and some may be glad that DJ Uiagalelei will likely enter the portal today. Today is official day that they get into the portal, and they don't really bring guys in. I think those are the things that that you have to look at and say, well, if they're not participating in it, if they're not going to bring guys in and they're going to lose guys, he's probably looking at that and saying, I probably need to reevaluate it, or at least he should be.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that statement. I wanted to clarify that what he actually said, because I know a lot of people said he hated it, and I was just clarifying like the reason why, not necessarily he's against NIL, but what he said about it.
Let's talk Clemson for a second, because you mentioned the change at quarterback. And so I did my research on Clemson. I haven't seen them nearly as much as you, but I did that yesterday once the selection was made for the Orange Bowl. And Chris, describe what happened in that quarterback situation and where they are now, because Dabo Swinney said after the ACC championship game, this is the new direction. No more DJ.
Well, if you go through the course of this year, DJ Uiagalelei has been very inconsistent. And it's been a lot of bad with sprinkling in of some good. And Dabo, as he does, he's very passionate. He defended his guy. That's what he does. And, a lot of criticism. Play the young guy. Play Caleb Calhoun. That's the key. And he, Dabo was adamant. DJ goes out and has a good game. You see, that's why he's my quarterback and all that. And then, again, you got to be careful about that, because, then he plays poorly. And then you got – now you Dave talking about walking it back. Essentially, he's walking it back again. He's saying, Caleb Calhoun is my guy of the future. Now, for Clemson, their fan base, and it's always second guessing, Caleb Calhoun should have been the starter all year long. And if he was, we could have been 11-1, and who knows, maybe they're part of the conversation in the playoffs, at least this past week with all the chaos. So that's just kind of typically what's happened there. Is Klubnik, to me, while he may not have been ready, it fits more of what Clemson's traditional offense was. And that is, he's got dual threat capabilities. And I think DJ is really a guy that struggles under pocket pressure, and I think that's been a real big problem with him. Look, Dabo more than any, and this goes to his view of NIL and transfer portal, very, very loyal. He kind of is that old school of, come in, I only want my recruits. I want to promote coaches from within, and the guy who's the returning players, they start, and the younger guys have to sit and play. I mean, that, Trevor Lawrence sat maybe in some people's eyes a little bit too long. But it's hard to really say when a young guy is ready, because when people come in and say, and when he plays well, they say, well, should have played earlier. Look at what will happen. Not necessarily. Sometimes it's what you see in practice. And when you start to see it click in practice, that's when you put the guy in. People criticize Tennessee for not playing Hendon Hooker sooner. Well, the Tennessee might have been better if they played him. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe Hendon Hooker would have made a ton of mistakes, and it might have retarded his, progression last year. Don't know that, but that's the story in general of how it plays out normally at Clemson, and what's happened with DJU, who's a California kid who's gotten a lot of criticism. Dabo tried to stick up for him. Now he's going forward with Klubnik, and DJ looks like he's going to enter the portal and probably end out in the West Coast, back where he's from.
If you can hit that like button, thumbs up, we would greatly appreciate it. I want to bring Caleb Calhoun back in here. But first, if you can address that defensive line of Clemson's, it was supposed to be one of the best in the nation. They've had injuries and even just a tragic issue with one of their players and an illness in his family. And it hasn't come together as the most dominant defensive line in the country. And I think that's what most of us thought to begin the year. Why?
Well, a few reasons. It's a talented group. They have, I would say it's fair to say they haven't played up to their talent level. I think there are a few reasons why. I think that, first of all, let's just discuss like the pass rush and defending the pass. It's the pass rush and the coverage that works in a collaborative effort. They've not played very well on the back end. The pass rush has been a little spotty. People have had some success running the football on them at times, and their offense has been spotty. So a lot of times we talk about all the time, and we talk about Tennessee or anybody, the importance of you can't separate offense, defense, and special teams. They are all different units that connect together like a triangle. I mean, they're all connected. And I think the fact that their offense has been so inconsistent has put their defense in bad situations. And I do think it's really hurt them. In the past, when the offense has been really good, that defensive line could tee off and do what they do best, rush the passer. This team is, at times have been really good against certain opponents, but they've not been as good against the run. And that's a big part of why they've underachieved.
Chris, I want to jump in real quick on, Clemson obviously struggled the week after Tennessee did with Spencer Rattler. And this is kind of relevant to what Dave was talking about with Clemson's defense. We know Tennessee's defense struggled a lot against South Carolina, and we know some of the stories behind it now with Jeremy Banks and NIL and whatever. But then Clemson did it a week later. Was that about Spencer Rattler turning a corner, do you think? Or do you think that was also just about Clemson's defensive woes?
Well, Spencer Rattler, prior to the Tennessee game, had not done anything very consistently all year long. So we got 2 games in a row. So is that turning the corner? I mean, it's a positive sign to do it 2 in a row now. If they can do it 3 times in a row, they've got Notre Dame in the playoffs, in the bowl game. So I think they certainly hope so at South Carolina that he's turned the corner, and sometimes that happens that way. But we're not going to know that until we get a little bit longer stretch. And I do think that the performance against Clemson was even more impressive because it piggybacked off of, and I do think that Clemson has more personnel, better personnel than Tennessee defensively to do it and to back it up. And to have to do it in a game where you've got to win a shootout, which they did, because they dominated Tennessee. They didn't dominate Clemson. I mean, it was a back and forth, could have gone either way. That was impressive to do that and back that up. I always think it's, anybody can have a lot of success. Excuse me.
You're a busy man this morning, Chris.
Yeah, it's coaching search season. It's transfer portal season. It's a lot of stuff going on. And I think I would know how to turn that off. But anyway, that's kind of my thoughts on that is that I think that he perhaps has turned the corner, but I don't know. I think that the South Carolina team, which I was critical of, I didn't think they were particularly well coached in the early part of the year. I didn't think they played with any consistency. Look, I give credit where credit's due. They did a good job against Tennessee, good job against Clemson, and I'm curious to see if they can build on that against Notre Dame, and we'll go from there.
So you talked about the importance of Dabo Swinney and the importance of loyalty to Dabo Swinney, basically within his own, community, I guess.
Right.
What is the difference? Let's just look at the difference between Heupel and Swinney and why Heupel has having so much more success, I think, as of late in the recruiting process.
Well, I don't know. First of all, I think the fact that Clemson is perceived to be on a downswing. They've lost their edge. They've dominated in the ACC. They've not been as dominant looking. They got completely hammered by Notre Dame. Things that have not happened to Clemson in the past. There's been a perception, and it's rankled Clemson folks that, well, you're only good because you're in the weak ACC. Well, it's not true because they have won 2 national titles, and they have performed well outside of ACC play. And I do believe at their best they could have been, top 2, top 3 in the SEC and can be right there with Alabama and Georgia for a stretch. But again, consistency, and as time has gone along, it hasn't been quite as good. What's changed? Well, lost his coordinators, and Dabo is not the great X's and O guy. He's very average, in fact. So he's more of a culture builder and, kind of a guy that relates well to his players. Again, kind of very close relationship with them. But everybody relies on their coordinators. But certain guys rely on them more. The guys that are really good X's and O guys can have it's less intrusive when a coach leaves. This is a complete change. So they're winning mainly on talent. And I think while they're winning, you're seeing some of the issues start to, fray apart at the edges. It's not a disaster. Last year I thought it was a pretty good coaching job to rebound from all the things that happened. But you're looking at it, they're no longer they're making the playoffs, and they're not even a threat right now, even though with 2 losses, they were completely out. Whereas Tennessee, obviously, they're just building off the hot year, the explosive offense. That's why an Alex Scolish is, moving on. You strike while the iron's hot. So Tennessee's quote unquote the hot team, but as indication is that can go away like that. You can go from bad to really good very quick. You can go from good to, after, everybody was talking about how the future at Arkansas and Sam Pittman is great. Well, Sam is good, but they were talking about, oh, look, he's ready to take that. He's going to be great. And now it's you lose a few guys. It's a developmental program, and they're just kind of mediocre this year. So everybody, I think what it is everybody reacts to the moment. Clemson still recruits at a very, very high level, and I think recruiting is all relative to your conference you're in. Clemson has never been the school that finishes 1, 2, or 3 in recruiting. They'll finish top 10 every year. They're the best in the ACC. Problem in the SEC is, you might finish in the top 5 in the SEC in recruiting and be third in the top 5 nationally, be third in the SEC. So everything's relative to the conference that you play in. And that's, I think, that why Josh is having some success. But is he having more success than Clemson? I think time's going to tell on that.
Chris, let me ask you this about the Alex Golish situation. First, remind you that Big Orange Phillies is in North Knoxville and Maynardville Pike, very convenient to Maynardville and also convenient to the Halls and Powell area. So get out there, great food, great activities such as billiards, darts. They've got cornhole as well, and they're family friendly. That's Big Orange Phillies. Alex Golish goes to South Florida, which for some reason is not anywhere close to South Florida. But anyway, despite the school's location, he goes to South Florida. And your thoughts on that move? Is he trying to take any other Tennessee coaches with him, to your knowledge?
Well, I'm sure I think it'll be people that are a little further down on the staff that he has connections with. I think he will, at least certainly offer a couple of positions, and it always depends upon the fit there for the specific individual. Everybody's trying to look for an opportunity. So first time coordinator, whatever, you will look for people on the staff. South Florida's, it's a challenging job. I'll say that. They are working towards getting that new stadium. It's in Tampa, and it's got a lot of area. Central Florida is kind of ahead of them. They got their on-campus stadium. They got a little bit better infrastructure. So South Florida is trying to get that. And I think that's really important, to be honest with you. It's very sterile. I don't care. You go to an NFL stadium, Raymond James Stadium, and that's your home stadium. And it just doesn't have quite the feel. But trying to catch Central Florida is what they're trying to do. They've had some coaches there that have not had a lot of success, quite frankly, that have had some pedigree to, at least some experience. So this is going to be intriguing. I think what Alex is going to have to do is what he knows, and that is going to have to run a specialized offense, going to have to get some of that skill position talent in that both that South and Central Florida area, and see what he can do with it and maybe build towards the future. But they've not been real patient, and the reason is because they're looking across in Orlando and seeing that Central Florida is ahead of them.
Yeah, I know Caleb wants to jump in here, but if I can real quick, there's a debate on Twitter about how much he handled play calling, how much Josh Heupel handled play calling. What can you tell us about the inner workings of who developed the offense? I mean, I think it's mostly Heupel, but how much of input did Golish have in both play calling and development of the offense, play design, all that stuff?
Well, Alex ran all the offensive meetings because you've got to. When the head coach is the play caller, he's in those meetings, but a head coach often gets pulled out of a meeting to do head coach things, something he's got to deal with or what have you. So everything is run through Josh, but Alex is when you have a head coach who calls the plays, let's just say on offense, but it could be on defense as well. Somebody's got to coordinate the meetings, and it's got to be somebody that doesn't have to be a title, but has to coordinate the meetings for when the head coach can't be there, because he'll jump in there. He may stay in the meetings a lot, like Josh will be in the offensive meetings, and really won't step a whole lot other than to peek into the defensive meetings to get a feel. He's going to be in the offensive meeting. So it is Josh's offense. It is not, we just talked about a situation like Dabo and Clemson. It's not one of those situations. This is Josh's offense. Josh can run it, and who's ever going to coordinate it is going to do it like they've done it before. Somebody's going to coordinate it, organize it, and Josh will put his stamp on it. Things will run through Josh. So I don't listen. Don't want to be dismissive of because Alex is outstanding, and I'm happy for his opportunity. But this is something that Josh should be able to handle. Now, the biggest thing, and already you can already see what people are going to say. The likelihood that this offense is going to pick up and be as good next year, we don't know. The quarterback play is going to be as good. Who's coming back? Who's coming in? There's a lot of things that are going to have an impact, more than just, who's going to be the coordinator or who's going to take Alex's place.
Chris, I wanted to jump back to the Tennessee Clemson game real quick, to the Orange Bowl. I was doing a little bit of my research. I didn't do as much as Dave did on Clemson, but I do know that we all know Tennessee. Joe Milton has major accuracy issues, and against a game like Clemson, you would think that would be a problem. I did see Notre Dame when they blew out Clemson, though. Drew Pine only threw for like 85 yards, and so can Tennessee beat Clemson without Milton? With Milton playing maybe even below average game.
Well, they're going to have to do it a lot differently because they're built a lot differently. Tennessee is than Notre Dame. Tennessee's a power team, and so they run play action. That's not what Tennessee does. So their success against Clemson is going to have to come with what they do. Run a lot of tempo, trying to get them misaligned, and take advantage of that secondary. So, yes, they can have success against Clemson. They absolutely can beat Clemson. But it's going to have to be within the confines of how they do it. It's going to require Joe Milton to be accurate because they will get guys and scheme guys open against Clemson. This secondary can be beat. But you got to hit those throws, and we don't know. We've got the Vanderbilt game, which is fine, but we got to see a lot of practice time. So, we'll see. We'll see how accurate he can be. I think there are going to be plays to be made against this Clemson secondary. That much I know. Whether Tennessee's going to be able to do it, I don't know. But are they going to come out and just blow Clemson off the ball and like Notre Dame did? No, because that's not what they do. They're going to be angle blocking, tempo, get to the second level. That's how Tennessee scheme works.
So let's switch to the college football playoff rankings and how it ended up and all that stuff. One thing I was really, I guess, kind of confused on is Penn State's 2 losses were to 2 top 5 teams, top 4 teams. one to Michigan, and one to Ohio State. With everything that's going on, Alabama lost, to LSU and to Tennessee. And Tennessee lost heavily to both Georgia and South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Why wasn't Penn State considered more, ranked higher than either Alabama or Tennessee?
I think their wins, they're not having enough good wins. I think you mentioned it. The most impressive thing they did was, they lost. They actually got hammered in 2 games, and then they won all the games that they were kind of supposed to win. And look, I'm not saying that there wasn't some impressive wins against some decent teams, but they didn't have a really good win. I think that was the difference. And I think the losses were decisive losses. They were hammered by both. Watching both the games, they weren't really close against those 2 teams. I think Penn State's good. I don't think there's anything special. I don't know that I can quibble so much about where they're ranked. I probably wouldn't have had them any higher, to be honest with you.
As far as Tennessee, Chris, do you think it's just Joey Halzle that they put in Golish's spot at the offensive coordinator position?
I think if they promote from within, that's the most likely scenario. But the other thing you have to look at when you have openings, and you've got to look at your staff, is there somebody out there that you'd like to add in a role that that might alter that a little bit. I think because you're not looking, Josh is not looking to change the offense or do anything different. It's still going to be his offense. Where who's most capable and has the best understanding of what they do among candidates for that job? Well, there's maybe some people outside that he might consider that could come in and seamlessly, with more experience, do that role. But if he can't get them, or if he decides that guy on his staff is just as good or better, then I think he promotes him. So, that's how you go through the process. It's just not, people say, well, go get this guy. And that he wants a guy that understands what they do, because they're not going to change the offense. They're not going to modify whether people think they should or shouldn't, and do a little bit, more, different things. That's not what he wants. So what he's looking for is that right fit. And I think it's somebody that's going to be comfortable being able to handle the role that Alex had. And so I think it's more than likely, depending upon who you might be able to get outside, more than likely going to be a promotion from within. That's just a guess, though.
Scale of 1 to 10. 1, absolutely idiotic. 10, you absolutely love it. Deion Sanders to Colorado.
First of all, on Deion, we don't know how well he can coach. He's not coached very long. He's done a phenomenal job at Jackson State. He's put NIL deals together for Travis Hunter, his sons, and a few other folks. So he's got way more talent than anybody plays in the SWAC, because nobody else has NIL deals over there. And he's done that. So we need to see how well he can coach. But I can tell you, I have studied this Colorado program for a while. Actually, I don't know if you guys know Rick George, but Rick was at Vanderbilt with Jerry DiNardo. Anyways, been around a while, and I know Rick really well. He's the athletic director at Colorado. It's been 25 years since they've had one good year. Mike McIntyre, ironically, George McIntyre's son, another Vanderbilt, ironic how, you throw that in there, and that was the connection there. And Mike did a nice job, was a coach of the year. We forget that just a few years ago, but they've had major problems. They've been, for some reason, they have been very reluctant to accept transfers in, like the transfer portal, accept them in academically, which is, I don't know how you're going to survive and be relevant if you're going to be that restrictive of that. That's obviously changed. They said we have gotten so bad, so irrelevant. I don't know how well it's going to be, but there's one thing that Deion does better than anybody. He moves the needle. Yeah. I mean, he has put them on the map. Typical Deion. I don't know if you heard what he said in the team meeting.
I did. It was phenomenal. It made me. It made me want to get out of bed and
no.
go.
He told his players, y'all get ready, get in the portal, because I'm bringing my own luggage. And he said, and it's Louis. And even I knew he was meaning Louis Vuitton. I mean, it's like typical Deion. He is that. So a lot of shtick. We'll see how well he does. I'm going to just tell you this. He's got 2 sons. The quarterback could line up and play for anybody in the SEC today. This guy has got big-time ability. So just by having the genes of he can bring his son with him, that gives you something that they haven't had in a long time. So it's going to bring a lot of juice. So here's what I say, too. There's also had some issues at Colorado with fundraising, with bringing money. When Colorado was really successful back in the Bill McCartney days, the Coors, the beer company, was a big, big reason why. They put a lot of money into that program. They have that's kind of been lost throughout the years. And so now what does Deion do the best? Fundraise, get things out there. So if nothing else, he's going to raise the level of that. And so I believe that a South Florida, and I know Colorado's a Pac-12 job, but where you need an identity, you need juice, you need excitement, you need to move the needle, I think that makes some sense. I think that makes a lot more sense than, say, at a place like Auburn, where, you're going to have the NIL money, where coaching's going to matter more. Here, they're going to get Colorado better just by getting better players, because they have, I think, the worst roster in Power 5.
Yeah.
The Power 5 schools. I think
Chris,
they have the worst roster.
Chris, I wanted to jump in because it's funny. You brought up Auburn, and I get that. But one thing that kind of threw me off was I had read reports, and I don't know how true they are, that Deion was down to Colorado and Cincinnati and chose Colorado. Kind of shocked me because I think Cincinnati joining the Big 12, I think Cincinnati's a much better job nowadays. I mean, everything you just mentioned about Colorado, but also Cincinnati's now the second Power 5 school in Ohio, which is maybe the second most fertile recruiting state in the country. And I don't know. I was just kind of I would have taken Cincinnati. I would have thought that's a better job.
Well, I don't know that that Cincinnati offered him, and it's possible, but that's not my understanding, and so I don't know. So I don't know that he had the opportunity, but I do think the Colorado job intrigued him for a number of reasons. But let me just say this too. Mel Tucker spent like a very short time in Colorado, and he got the Michigan State job. So I think there's only one way to go but up at Colorado. I think at Cincinnati, I think that's an established program. And if, you're kind of expected to win there now, and if you don't, I think it's a safer job at Colorado because you can only go up. And think about the fact that if he can get this team to 8-4 next year, Coach of the Year. Are we
saying Deion ran from pressure?
Well, Deion, I think, is looking for opportunity. And I don't know that, again, I don't have it. There are media reports that he was a candidate for Cincinnati. My understanding of Cincinnati's search, that wasn't true. But, I can't say for certain.
Great stuff, Chris. I love the hire. I love the speech. I watched it at 10 o'clock last night, and I thought I'm going to bounce out of my bed and go join an anytime gym because I was fired up. I just love the content of it. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I love it. Go to LandryFootball.com to learn more about football than you ever dreamed possible. He is Chris Landry. I'm Dave Hooker. Chris will talk to you shortly. I certainly appreciate the time, sir.
Thanks so much. Appreciate you guys. Have a great one. Take care.
Yeah, he just goes. Did you all watch the speech by chance?